Okay, so we are back, and we'll be talking about the fourth episode of The Mandalorian. And right off the bat, should we call this Star Wars, or is this Seven Samurai?
Oh yeah, it's Seven Samurai mixed with like the feeling of a like a CBS drama, like Dr.
Mm.
Quinn Medicine Woman or something. Like doesn't didn't it have that kind of like cheesy kind of feel to it?
Well, I'm a little mixed on this one because like the first half is awesome. I love the first
Oh.
half, and then I don't know. Maybe it's just come. I really hate nighttime fighting because I have horrible vision. I just
Game of
hated
Thrones ruined you.
Game of Thrones ruined that. Like, how are you gonna have the Greyjoy ships battle at nighttime? I'm sorry. Anyways, somehow we always slip in Game of Thrones here, and by we I mean me. Um, no, it's just I don't know. I thought the episode was awesome. I liked it way better than the first three we've gotten. But
Hmm.
there's something still about this show that I can't quite super be because everybody's giving it a 10 out of 10, and
This last episode really.
yeah, I really liked it. Don't get me wrong. I would give
No,
it.
I mean I think it was fine. It had a very different feel from the other three. It
Yes,
was
it did.
all of a sudden our Mandalorian is straight up good guy. Like he went from anti-hero to milk toast pretty fast.
Well, he is doing it for a reason. He wants a safe place for the kid. We're just calling it a
Yeah.
kid now, apparently, and not Baby Yoda, the kid, which I like the kid better. But he just wants a safe place for the kid, and if he has to do this one video game mission, this side quest for it, he even got a new follower, kinda, who went her own separate way. So let's start from the beginning.
Right.
So we go to a planet that doesn't have a starport. There are planets in the Star Wars galaxy that aren't as highly advanced like Coruscant. They're just
Yeah.
kind of like backwater worlds, which reminds me a lot of Firefly. You know, like the inner core worlds are highly
I did like I liked the logistics of their village. Like I thought that was really cool how they were using quite primitive technology with a little bit of advanced
the
technology
robot.
mixed in. Yeah, because when you go to other countries like that are not that technologically advanced, you'll find that they'll have little bits of something.
Mm.
Like you can be places that don't have clean water, but people will have cell phones, which is a really odd thing. But and you're like, well, how do they charge their cell phones if they don't have electricity? And it's like, well, when they're in town, like in their charging stores where they can charge their cell phone, and then they take it back to their village without electricity,
Hmm.
and then they have that phone for a while, and you're like, oh wow, so it's pretty neat that they're living in these huts, but they have droids, like that's something that actually would happen,
Hmm.
and so I thought that was interesting. Um,
Well, I do like that these people are poor, but they're still in a galaxy far, far away. So, I mean, the most average poor piece of technology they could have is like a robot that helps them fish for krill. That's
yeah.
what they do. And you were complaining to me about like how you had some people who are Asian and some people who are redheads.
I did think it was rather funny. I mean, like, so it's a relatively small village, and then so if in a relatively small isolated population, you're gonna be kind of ethnically, racially similar because of all the interbreeding. Um, but they had a very genetically diverse group, considering it's like a village of like 200. They're talking about how their grandparents like built this village, and like they've been here for a while, but like you have these separate races, like there's Asians and American Indians and white people, redheads, all living in this village.
Leave it to
You're like
Preston to like
but I'm
somehow
saying
get
you
genetics
would
in
have
here.
been, but you would have been mixed up, like like after 3 or 4 generations, like uh, with so few people.
So the
But
Mandalorian gets on this planet, and the planet is being attacked by bandits apparently, and the bandits have got themselves an ATST, all-terrain scout transport,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I love what they did with the ATST. They modified it to look very tribal, and they even modified the lights inside it to have red the red lights so the eyes glow, which is a nice intimidating factor there. I really like that. But it also shows the state of the galaxy, which is essentially the Empire is done. It's completely gone. They're either leaving stuff behind, or bandits are just getting so brazen and they're just getting so weak. The state of them are just so weak that bandits are just stealing their stuff. But regardless, these guys have chosen to use this ATST to raid this village for whatever they have. Like, I don't like. I'm sure there are towns.
It's actually kind of similar to the plot. Like, it's kind of similar to the plot of George R. R. Martin's Thousand Worlds, where Thousand Worlds, there was an era of greater technology, and then there was a collapse, and so people are living a little bit more primitively, but there's these relics of advanced technology sitting around that people are taking advantage of. We always think about in our society, technology moving forward, but sometimes things go backwards. And there's a few examples, like after the fall of the Roman Empire, like people still kind of used the aqueducts until they collapsed, and they didn't know how to repair them, or they'll take the side of a temple, they don't know how to cut the stone or build that temple, but they'll pull the blocks out and help build a house or something with it. I mean, they're utilizing an era of greater technology, that's left over. Like, it's very clear that this big group of bandits couldn't build their own ATST.
Of course.
But they found the remnants of the Empire's, leavings, or, so. But
the Mando, he goes into this backwater planet, and he's looking for a place to drop the kid off, and he goes into... I want to say it's like a makeshift town, maybe a little like port, or it's not even a port, it's just like a little outpost or whatever, for trading. And he goes inside the bar, which I like, and he sees our first female protagonist, Cara Dune, who is an ex-rebel commando who served...
Wait, Carl Weathers wasn't female?
Cara Dune, played by Gina Carano, I believe her name was. I mispronounced her name last time. I thought it was Giancarlo Esposito, which is the actual villain that we will get in later on. He was in the trailers.
Oh, really?
Right. Okay. So
but it's the girl from Deadpool.
Yes, the chick from Deadpool. She was the lieutenant to the main guy, to the main villain.
The woman from Deadpool. Yes. You're like I like messed up and said girl, and then you made it worse and said chick, and I was like, oh Jesus.
I love you, Preston. Preston, I love you.
It's like the broad from Deadpool. You're from Jersey.
But and
the woman from Deadpool. Yes.
The woman from Deadpool, and who's also an MMA fighter in real life. She's freaking awesome. The Mando notices her, and he finds it suspicious. He tries to find her outside, and they get into a nice little fight. I actually really like this fight. She gets the jump on him and beats him up pretty nicely, but he still manages to hold his own, which shows how much of a badass he is.
I call those wharf fights.
Wharf fights?
Yeah, so in Star Trek, whenever you wanted to establish that an opponent was super strong, he would first beat up Worf. And so, and that's how you establish, like, oh, he must be really strong because he just beat up Worf. So they needed to establish her as, like, a strong badass.
Wait,
so
why is Worf the scale? Just because he's a Klingon?
Yeah, but it's just, he's the head of security, he's a Klingon, and you're just like, oh, like, we just kind of, it's just given that he's super strong and buff. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to establish that an alien is really formidable, he immediately, like, the first thing, he comes in, he beats up Worf. And then you're like, oh, man, they must be strong. That's the first thing. And so that's the thing. So they had to establish her as strong, so she had to beat up the Mandalorian, right? So that was, like, the first thing she had to do to prove herself to us as characters. So she had to beat up Worf.
Well, she almost beats him up. Essentially, they get into a nice stalemate.
Yeah, it's a tie.
I really do like that fight scene, though, and she is ex-commando from the Rebels, and
It was a really good fight scene. You could see the hits. You knew what was going on. I think it probably had something to do with the fact that she's a real fighter.
So, yes, that is because she does MMA in real life, and yeah. I gotta say, I don't know why. Every time I see like actual fist fighting going on in Star Wars, I'm always taken aback a little because you don't really expect actual like physical combat like that in Star Wars. You really don't. It's happened, obviously. It's happened several times, mostly with Luke, but you almost don't see it go down as much.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's mostly blasters and
Lightsabers.
lightsaber fights, right? You don't really think about the like physical fight. I guess you've got Luke against the trash compactor monster.
And you also have him against the Rancor.
Right. I mean,
I can't. Wow.
Chewbacca throws some people.
That's
but
right.
It's like one hit. It's like, one hit and they're done.
Obi-Wan fights Jango, and then Obi-Wan kind of tries to fight Grievous. But it's really sparing. Wow.
Yeah.
Now that you think about it,
not something that happens very much.
that one time in Force Awakens where Rey beats up those guys trying to rob her. Wow, doesn't happen that often.
But yeah, and plus with the the roughness, like where you're actually seeing the hits, it was a really good fight. All things considered.
And eventually, we find out the state of the galaxy, and she's just going off to do her own thing, kind of retiring, just doing whatever, because the state of the galaxy is essentially that the Empire. This is several years after the Battle of Jakku, where the Empire is finally defeated. There are stragglers like warlords and mercenaries out there.
She used Endor as the date. She said after Endor, which was
because that's when the final blow was Jakku, but the Empire was really defeated at Endor. That's when like they really got on their knees, and the final like killing shot was Jakku. And
I read the piece of Jakku. It's okay. I read that. That was one of the expanded universe books I read.
Oh, the Aftermath.
Yeah.
Or Lost Stars.
No, it was Peace. Isn't that the name of it? I see. If I'm messing it up,
because this is new material. This is not like expanded universe from like decades ago.
Battle wasn't there. One of the first expanded universe books after the Zahn trilogy.
Oh no! Preston. When Disney buys out Star Wars, they made the old canon obsolete. So everything you've ever read is not relevant anymore.
I know. And now it's that book is probably called The Piece That's Somewhere Else. But
like the stuff that happens right after Endor is Star Wars Aftermath, and in Star Wars Aftermath we find out that Mon Mothma. She's like the head of the New Republic at this point. I think she reduces the Alliance military down by 40% or to 40%. Like she drastically like demilitarizes a lot of like the Alliance military, and I'm assuming Cara doesn't have a job because of that. I forgot what she said as to why
it was called the Truce at Bakura.
Truce at Bakura, right?
What was I thinking?
Where the Empire and the Alliance, they kind of like have a somewhat of a partnership to go up against like these Velociraptor-looking aliens.
Yeah,
I remember. So. Yeah, but no, this is a completely new thing that happens after Jakku, where the Empire is utterly destroyed and decimated. Any surviving Imperials go into unknown space to form the First Order. Any Imperials left behind are just kind of losers and just guys who didn't make the cut to go into unknown regions. So she spent a good chunk of that time after Endor just hunting these guys down. And there's no need to do that anymore because the treaty was signed years ago, and a lot of the old Imperial people are just trying to cling to power in their own sectors, or they're essentially just trying to do their own thing, like Werner Herzog was trying to a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
So eventually we get the villagers meeting up with the Mando and offering him money, and he's just really not interested, but he takes their offer anyways because he wants a safe place for the kid, and he brings Cara Dune with him. And this is where we get our Seven Samurai thing, where they go to the village, it's a peaceful life, and we find out that he can't really take off his helmet, which we kind of knew.
Right, but they're more specific. He can take off his helmet in private, so he can like take a shower and eat.
And this is weird because I don't understand this sect of the Mandalorian tribe, because once again we've seen Mandalorians in the Clone Wars cartoon and in the Rebels cartoon, and this whole thing is kind of fairly new. Like it's not really. This might be like a different sect of Mandalorians, and to be fair, in the Clone Wars, it is established that Mandalore as a whole is trying to give up its warrior violent ways. And the Mandalorians that don't want to do that, they were exiled to like one of the moons of Mandalore. So this could be a sect of that group of guys.
Yeah.
It's
It's
still
just
not clear.
that Jango Fett, he took off his helmet. So I don't know what's going on. So, I mean, he took off his helmet at the cloning facility and talked to Ben Kenobi face to face.
Right.
So I don't. I mean, you could say that maybe Boba Fett in his later years like adhered to that, but Jango Fett certainly didn't. So I don't know what's going on.
Well, here's the thing with Boba Fett. Like Boba Fett, even though he may, I still don't know what's going on with that. I don't know if he is a Mandalorian or not. And we'll get to this in regards to this character. But I think Boba Fett wasn't a part of a tribe or a clan or anything, so he could just do whatever.
Who knows? I mean, like I say, it's kind of weird when your first example of a people is an exception of it.
Right. Yeah. And
like Spock,
we also learned that our Mando, he's not really a Mandalorian. He was just rescued by them. And he's trying to repay them any way he can.
Right, but is that how the Mandalorians work? And I mean that's the thing is we don't know, like, are the Mandalorians a group of people where people can just join them? Like, are they an ethnicity that lets in immigrants essentially? Mm-hmm. Or are they racially different Mandalorians? So I don't know. I mean, it could be. That's the thing is when we say something like a Corellian, right? Corellians are just human. They're just people, right? There's not much ethnically different between it's like saying a New Yorker versus a New Jerseyan. Like you can't pin down anything racially different between New Yorkers and New Jerseyans. Mm-hmm. I mean, because they're both multi-ethnic places, but there are cultural differences between New Jersey and New York, but not racial differences.
Right.
And so Mandalorians, they might just be human beings that accept people into their culture, that are multi-ethnic.
Or maybe he's another exception.
Or he's another exception. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I don't know if they're their own separate racial, like all of them have black hair or something, or all of them have attached earlobes. If there's something racially different about them genetically, or they're just a multiracial, multi-ethnic human society that accepts people.
They might be multiracial because in the Clone Wars cartoon, Obi-Wan's girlfriend, Satine, she has blonde hair, blue eyes. And if Jango Fett was a Mandalorian, I believe the actor for Jango Fett, he is Maori. I think I'm saying that right. So they might just be multicultural and multi-ethnic. However, eventually we find out that the villagers don't really know how to fight, of course. Only the widow, she knows how to shoot a blaster. So Mando and Cara Dune, they teach the villagers as well as form a plan on how to take out the AT-ST. At first, she's like, I've seen a bunch of men get taken out by these things. There's no way we can. You guys gotta move.
If only we had 2 logs. If only we had 2 logs.
Or a very long rope, so that way when it walks by, it can trip. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Or didn't one fall over because they had a whole log roll of them? Mm-hmm. The one I hated that I thought was stupid, even as a freaking 7-year-old child. Even as a 7-year-old child, I thought the 2 logs coming together to crush the AT-ST was stupid. I thought that was just so dumb. I was just like, isn't that made of steel or something?
Preston,
I couldn't believe it even as a child. I thought it was ridiculous.
Preston, don't you know the trees on Endor, I guess, are alien trees that are stronger than steel?
It's just I don't know. It was a really dumb scene.
So they need to figure out some way to trap the ATST, and they do. Not before they were trying to convince the villagers to leave. Nope, you guys got to get out of here. It's the ATST. We can't fight it. Oh no. But at night they perform a nice little raid, Cara Dune and the Mando, on the Bandits' encampment, and yeah, it goes smoothly until they got to get the hell out of there. What I don't understand is why didn't they just locate the ATST and kill the driver and take control of it first, because I'm sure like it's
Right.
powered down.
Throw a bomb in it then.
Throw a bomb in it, or not even that. The Mandalorian, he has a ship with guns on it. Just like park the ship
Yeah.
near the village and then run back to the ship when the ATSD comes and swoop in and shoot it down.
I mean, that's the thing is he could fly over, drop a thermal detonator down on it, and
It's why he doesn't have a
fine.
jetpack, because that would be way too easy.
I also thought it was really funny. This is kind of random, but so his love interest, the one that
The Widow?
for some reason, yeah, the one that's totally into him, even though she hasn't seen his face. I mean,
Don't even. You're gonna.
I mean, we all know that he's handsome. He's a handsome guy.
Oh,
under
I
there,
thought you were gonna
but-
make a joke in regards to me, because
No.
Okay, go ahead.
No. But but we all know that he's a handsome guy under there, but she doesn't. He could look like anything.
Mm-hmm.
He could, but she's just, she was really heavy flirting with him.
well, she is the widow. She's been lonely for a while.
Yeah, it was the actress is the same one that plays Akecheta's girlfriend from Westworld.
Dude, I don't remember anything about Akecheta. I don't remember a lot about season 2. It just wasn't that memorable for me thinking back on it now.
Akecheta is the American
I know
Indian
who
character.
Akecheta is. I really hated the Akecheta stuff. Like, it was cool, but I just was not a big fan of it.
And then he wants to be. Oh right, he has a girlfriend, and then he goes back and he starts remembering. But when he goes back, like she doesn't remember him anymore because she's been reassigned to a new.
Wait, we're talking about Mandalorian or Westworld?
I'm talking about Westworld.
Oh, dude, no, let's not branch off. What the fuck? I was like confused. What?
Anyway,
Mandalorian?
Akecheta's girlfriend is super into Pedro Pascal, and she's totally like, you need to be my kid's stepdad, and she's and then for some reason she's incredibly good at shooting, so she has some sort of military background, but we don't know what the hell it is.
Right.
It's never explored.
Well,
And it never will be.
they conduct their raid and bring the bandits back, and the villagers are actually able to fend off the bandits nicely. The ATST, it takes a while for it to fall into the trap, but eventually it does. And once again,
Well, it doesn't. They kind of, it slides in because
Yeah.
the earth kind of gets blown out. They kept saying it realizes it's a trap, but they kept saying like, come on, step forward. And it's like, dude, the jig is up. It's not going to step forward.
Well, I will say though, because as much as I hate nighttime fighting, the ATST with the red glowing eyes was a really nice touch. I really like that aesthetic. But eventually they repel the bandits and they take out the ATST. And all's well. Mando's going to leave the kid behind because his life apparently is no life for a kid, which I would agree. However, as he's about to leave, a bounty hunter tracks the kid down and is about to kill him when Cara Dune comes in here and shoots him in the back of the head. Which, once again, this is on Disney Plus, and they keep doing like these really cool like moments where it's like because Star Wars has a habit of kind of like pandering to children, which I really hate.
Yeah.
But the Mando has been kind of proving that it's more or less pandering to teenagers, because in the last episode he was coming in sneaking around, and like there was one scene in the last episode where he lassos the stormtrooper and stabs the thing in the guy in the back, or when he fires up the stormtrooper and is like just roasts the guy in his armor with his wrist flamethrower.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing, right? That you can have that Star Wars clearly has things like Jar Jar Binks, but then shows a man getting sawed in half, by a lightsaber and tumbling to his death. like pretty gruesome, violent stuff.
Well, that was Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm has always kind of like, even though they've pandered to children because they want to sell that merchandise, at the same time they realize that a good chunk of their audience is grown-up people who have grown up with Star Wars. So
Right. I mean, they make just as much money with their merchandising as they do with the with the film itself. So it's really, really important for them to market this shit to kids. And so they have to have like Baby Yoda and all the kids running over and being liking Baby Yoda and all of that in there. Like that has to be there. So they can market Baby Yoda to kids and make it a kid show. But you're right that all of a sudden it's also super violent.
I wouldn't say it's super violent, but it's just the right amount of violent to not bore the fuck out of me. Because let's be honest, we're never gonna get like a scene where someone is activating a lightsaber in front of children with the intent of killing them. We're never gonna get a scene where someone is like slaughtering sand people, or I'm sorry, Tusken Raiders. I'm sorry. I don't want you to get flagged. We're not gonna get a scene where someone is bisected after a lightsaber duel.
I mean, you're
Not with
right
Disney.
that's why they have it. The person be in a stormtrooper outfit, or a rubber mask from some random alien,
Right?
Because clearly, guys in rubber masks, they don't have feelings, and clones inside stormtrooper, they're not human beings anymore. For some reason, when you dehumanize them, all of a sudden it's for kids. There's definitely a weird philosophical debate we need to have about violence and betrayal of violence. Because for some reason, if you make your villain faceless, go ahead and slaughter them by the thousands, because that doesn't matter, and that's fine for kids. But give somebody a personality, and you get to show them the backstory a little. Nope, can't do it.
Well, the bounty hunter tracks down the kid there. The tracking fob is still active, and Cara Dune saves the kid. And apparently, the Mando can't leave the child here. That he has to flee with the child, not before saying goodbye to Cara Dune and the village itself. And yeah, so a lot of people were saying this episode was kind of pointless. Not really. The Mando is trying to have a place for the kid. It's just, I don't. Preston, does this still feel like a video game? Kind of.
It still feels like a video game. But I mean, the whole quest of the village thing, the Seven Samurai thing, felt very video game-ish.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, he should have he should have recruited a follower by now, and he kind of does. It's almost like a villain of the week or a follower of the week, because in episode 1 it was the little pig guy and IG-11. Episode 2 was just the pig guy, and episode 3 it's
Now, but for promotional material, I've seen the woman from Deadpool in like the main poster.
yeah, and IG-11 as well.
So maybe IG-11 isn't going to come. I mean, IG-11 clearly isn't coming back. I wonder if she's coming back.
She might, because there have been video games before that I've been trying to get you to play, where a character will go, they'll encounter some cool person along the way, befriend them, but they'll go their separate ways. But for the final battle, those characters will come back. So that might happen. He's just making allies along the way. And honestly, we always see 4 characters on the posters: the Mando, Cara Dune, IG-11, and Carl Weathers. So Carl Weathers will be back in some form or another, of course, because they left him alive. We might get another IG unit, because remember, we have IG-88 and IG-11. There has to be another IG unit out there. And Cara Dune, there's no way they would pay up the ads for Gina Carano and not utilize her again. She might even be back for season 2. Maybe not season 1, but we'll probably definitely see her in season 2.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they just, they wait for the test audiences. Disney has their whole science. Like, did she test well? Should we have her back?
What did you think of this episode? I would give it, I gave the last episode a 7.5. I really liked this episode. I would give it also a 7.5. It was not bad. I liked it. It's weird. I liked it better than episode 3, but I can't score it higher. I don't know why. It's just, once again, it's still not wowing me, but I really did like it.
I mean, I didn't like it as much as episode 3 because I thought episode 3 had just better lore and background and interesting stuff going on with the Mandalorian people. And we find a little bit more about the Mandalorian people. But yeah, I mean, it was entertaining. I liked the little battle. It worked for me. I thought that the villagers were a little too cheesy and typical. Like we're a primitive, innocent village. Help us, I thought that was a little too, I don't know, paint by numbers. But again, this is a space western, and so you're getting back to the Magnificent Seven, I suppose, with that. So I don't know.
Well, I am getting more used to Pedro Pascal's character, the Mando. Even though you can't see his face, it's really hard to connect with him. I am kind of connecting with him slowly, especially when he's talking to the widow and he's giving his own little backstory and whatnot. So I am slowly connecting with him. But I gotta say, the one thing I didn't like is that we have seen this before. In fact, I think the first time I've ever seen anything like this, where the hero comes in and trains the villagers to fight the incoming force, I think it was Evil Dead 3 Army of Darkness, where Ash trains the medieval citizens to beat back the army of the dead. But this is a tired trope. It is the Seven Samurai, the Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
We all have seen it before. But I don't think we've ever seen it in Star Wars. So,
Right.
yeah, I better never see this fucking concept ever again in Star Wars. Like, it's been done. It was done. Let it go. But they put a nice little twist on it. Like I said, I did like the ATST coming in and them not making it just like a normal ATST. It's a very tribal-looking one with the red eyes. That was cool.
I think that ATST did better than any of the other ATSTs. All of a sudden, it made it into an actually formidable piece of military equipment.
Right. and it somehow did manage to kill a single villager.
And I know some nerd is going to be like, ATSTs were at the Battle of Hoth and they did pretty well there. I'm like, yeah, okay, I know. But at the fucking Battle of Endor, they were the most ridiculously useless things. And that was the most trained, the best trained battalion that the Empire had.
The 501st, yeah.
According to the Empire. And yet they're defeated by twigs. And,
oh, wait, no, the 501st at Hoth. I don't know who the fuck was at Endor. Oh, yeah, no. The Emperor says, my legion of my best troops, yeah.
Right. And you're like, really? I mean, like they run up to people that are like, freeze, like, could you imagine?
Yeah.
Could you imagine, like, you get like Green Berets or Navy SEALs and they act like that. They act like in Return of the Jedi. Oh no, they're throwing rocks at us.
It's funny too because originally it wasn't supposed to be Ewoks. Originally, from what I heard, it was supposed to be Wookiees, which would make sense because you're building the second Death Star for some reason above Endor, but it would make more sense to build it above Kashyyyk and use the Wookiees as slave labor because, they're stronger, they have more endurance, blah, 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 blah. That would make more sense, but they built it above Endor.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're getting off topic, but Endor is the perfect storm of horribleness of George R. Martin. I mean, George Lucas's ideas blending with like commercialism, right? So you have George Lucas, like his whole thing about the first Star Wars trilogy is that it's a whole retelling of Vietnam, and the Americans were defeated by the Viet Cong, and the rebels are kind of this ragtag group, and that's what Star Wars and eventually Return of the Jedi becomes even more specific. Like they're going to beat us with jungle traps, which is what Vietnam. I wouldn't say it was the whole war, but a lot of it was these jungle traps that just neutralized our forces, and so the Ewoks are doing that. And it's like that idea, like George Lucas is like, I'm going to take something political and put it in there. And then they're like, how can we market this to children? Okay, let's make them teddy bears. Okay.
God, but you can also market Wookiees as well because they're like bigger teddy bears. So,
in fact, I think that one thing that the Mandalorian is failing at is they're not spending enough time showing us the faces of the enemies. Like the
Right.
rubber masked enemies, even the Mando, even on that desert planet when he was rescuing Baby Yoda, and when he was fighting those guys in the last episode, I don't really remember what they look like. You know?
Yeah, that's also true as well. Like I really liked one example of this is like in for Netflix's Marco Polo, like you have the court of Kubla Khan, and like there's so many awesome characters. You see all their faces, they have like personalities, and then the main antagonist is Jia Sadao, and he's the only antagonist in the entire series, and it's just one bad guy. And I think the only bad guy we've seen so far is Werner Herzog's the Imperial Warlord guy. You're right. There aren't enough
Yeah.
like bad guys that really like stand out, and in fact, there aren't any bad guys at all besides that one warlord guy.
Yeah, I mean, and when all those bounty hunters came after Mando, some of them looked kind of interesting,
But most of them were
they
generic.
only showed them for they just showed them for a split second, so I didn't really get an idea of what they looked like and
You
stuff.
had one
So
guy that was like Darth Maul's race, you had another guy in like this really cool looking scuba
yeah,
suit alien thing, or
I do remember the guy that was Darth Maul's race, where I was like, oh, that guy's interesting. Then I saw him for 1 second, and I was like, oh well.
and everybody's just like a random faceless henchman. It's just and Star Wars is known for like its interesting villains, you know, and we're not really getting a lot of interesting villains here, and that's the one thing it's missing. We have a cool protagonist, we have interesting side characters like Cara Dune and IG-11, and even the little pig guy. I always forget his name, played by Nick Nolte. But
Nick Nolte, Pig Boy, yeah.
and Carl Weathers, I guess, is whatever. But we're not really getting a lot of villains here, and I hope Giancarlo Esposito's character, who has a bunch of death troopers with him, we saw it in the trailer. I hope his character can bring a lot of like like menacing, like a
Yeah.
menacing threat to this whole thing. But it wasn't a bad episode. But I'm still not wowed. Like I really feel as though Disney should release the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. Now, one thing I know they're doing is there's going to be Baby Yoda toys
So that's the one thing.
for Christmas.
Baby Yoda really has been growing on me for like the last 3 episodes. It's just been kind of whatever. But I really love Baby Yoda this episode.
Well, I think their puppet work is just it's great. I mean, in many ways, it's very very similar. Even the shape of the ear to Gizmo from Gremlins, and like his movement of ears and like everything. And like how they hold him and everything, and him being cute and not really speaking, like it just reminds me so much of Gizmo, who was a big like gift at the time. I mean, they tried to market. Oh God, there's another big mistake. Gremlins, which is like this horror movie that they tried to market to kids and have all these toys.
When did
So
Gremlins
it
come
didn't
out?
work.
The 90s, right? Or the late 80s?
I want to say 84 is going to be my guess.
Well, there's your answer right there because the 80s had some fucking gnarly kids films. Like
Oh,
like
God.
some movies that were marketed to kids. It's
84,
like you go
yeah.
back and you're like, "Oh my god, what?"
Oh God, like there's every single I've probably talked about this before, but every single person that's seen Gremlins talks about the freaking weird story in the middle of it where Phoebe Cates talks about how her dad died, and it's just like the most horrific story of all time, and it's just like everybody remembers it, and it has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. She tells this like horrible story about how like her dad didn't come home for Christmas, and they don't know what happened, and they thought she was he abandoned them, and then few weeks go by, and something starts smelling in the it gets really cold around New Year's, and so they build a fire, and something's blocking the chimney, and it smells, so they call the chimney cleaners, and they expect to have like a dead raccoon pulled out, and they pull out her father in a Santa outfit.
Jesus Christ.
He tried to go down the chimney with presents, and he slipped and broke his neck. And you're like, why is this story in the middle of this movie, which was marketed to children? There were these Gizmo toys and everything. It's just horrific.
Huh. I'm actually going to look this clip up.
God.
I've actually never seen Gremlins.
Oh, Gremlins is a really crazy. It's a good movie, and then Gremlins 2 is the weirdest movie because it's a meta movie before movies were really meta. Like it's sort of the creator was like, I am going to completely just recognize the fact that this sequel is a big money grab and make a whole bunch of jokes about how it's a big money grab, and the whole movie is just jokes about that. And it's really weird, hilarious movie, but it's a completely different genre as well. Gremlins is weird and crazy, great puppet work, incredible puppet work, a lot of memorable scenes. Gremlins 2, also crazy, great movie, but in a completely different way. Such a weird.
I love your breakaway rant about Gremlins.
Oh my god! But it gets into like what Star Wars kind of is, and so Gremlins kind of makes sense because back in the day there weren't that many kids movies. Disney still thought that the way to make money was to get people to the theater, and so they didn't market stuff on video or anything like that. And so the only thing that was kind of on video was Star Wars and the Never-Ending Story and The Last Unicorn and The Dark Crystal, which is why like people in their 40s have a special connection to these movies, because when they were growing up, it was the only kids movies. Now, granted, like if there was a birthday party and you wanted all the kids to shut up, you didn't have like an infinite library of stuff. You couldn't just pop on Netflix. You couldn't give them a tablet. You popped on Star Wars because that was the only kids movie, which is why people in their 40s have like such a strong connection to it. And so there were so few kids movies out there, and they didn't really understand how profitable kids movies were. And so they're catching on. They're like, okay, how are we going to make this a kids movie? And you're like, a movie about little gremlins killing people? Okay, let's make it into a kids movie somehow. They're like, okay. And so that's how Gremlins happened. I mean, same thing, like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Like, let's put in a tiny Chinese kid and make it a kid's movie, but we're also going to have a scene in it where somebody dips their hand into somebody's chest and pulls out their live beating heart. Like, what? Like, this is how crazy the 80s were. And it all was because, there just were no kids movies. And so they were making all sorts of movies into kids movies. Ugh.
I love you, bud. You could talk for hours about just anything random. I love
you. Star Wars still has this element of that.
It does.
Like to get that same vibe, because Star Wars isn't really a kids movie, but it became the definitive kids movie, even though there's death and destruction. I mean, there's mass genocide. Like a planet blows up in the middle of this kids movie.
I keep thinking that Disney's era of Star Wars stuff it's not as because like I said, Lucasfilms when they made Star Wars, even the prequels, like they made it for kids as well, but they always included some elements in there that were kind of for like an older crowd as well.
Yeah.
But they never included blood. And I keep thinking that Disney doesn't do that, but they kind of did. I mean, Force Awakens, you have the killing of Han Solo, the explosion of the Hosnian Prime planets. You have a lot of stuff like that. Like stormtroopers are utterly decimated. The whole in Last Jedi, as much as I dislike that film, the missile hitting the bridge of the Radis and Leia is sucked out. That's also a little too risque as well. Like she's slowly dying in the darkness of space until she does that Mary Poppins thing, which is awkward. But anyways, back to what you were saying. Yes, so Disney is kind of being very, very smart here because Baby Yoda, my God, I can see the Christmas shelves now.
Oh yeah, and it's so funny because actually even in the title, like this is a story about war. Let's market it to kids. Like what? Okay. There's going to be large scale galactic death.
Like this is fine marketing to kids that I can get behind because Baby Yoda really has grown on me, and it's not really doing anything silly or annoying like Jar Jar. It's just sitting there being cute, which is fine. That's how I would like it.
There's no farts and everything yet, which Star Wars is unfortunately filled with a lot of farts. So many fart jokes.
Unfortunately. Preston, what would you rate this? I would give it a 7.5, but I still somehow liked it better than last episode, which I also gave a 7.5, but...
I'll rank it a little lower. I liked episode 3 more. I think this one was fine. I thought the battle and everything and the direction, I thought the fight scene, I thought everything was really great. I liked the design of the village. My only criticism is that it was that the the protagonists and the story of getting pulled in was a little too paint by numbers.
Cliche.
A little too, yeah, we're gonna trust this stranger with protecting our village. Okay, all right. What's to stop him from coming in and just taking everything from you? Yeah, but otherwise, I thought it was fine. I'd give it something like a 7.
Once again, the show is not bad. I'm still waiting to be wowed by it. I'm still finding it insane how everybody's still giving it like a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. It's just
right. I mean, when we compare it to other things where you finish an episode and you're like, oh my god,
like Watchmen.
Like Watchmen, but there's so many other shows out there where you watch an episode and you're just at the end you just have to decompress because you're like, whoa, like so much happened, or oh my god, that was heavy, or oh god,
well, Preston,
can't wait for the next
are
episode.
we the problem though? Are we expecting way too much? Because you and I are loving Watchmen, but Watchmen is so nuanced and there's so much going on with Watchmen, and this is just Star Wars. It's not supposed to be deep or engaging on that level. Are we the problem here, do you think?
I mean, yeah, you are correct. Like, this is for kids. It's a movie for kids, and somehow, we expect it to be for adults and have heavy themes, and it can't be. Star Wars is, it's not that Star Wars isn't political and adult in some ways, but it's simple. It's not complicated. There's not very much nuance to Star Wars. Like, when I say that, okay, this is George Lucas's political message, like, there's just one level to it. Like, it was very clear, like when Anakin Skywalker says, you're either with me or you're against, or you're my enemy. Like, we all know what that was referencing. There's no double layer or nuance. He was making a statement about American politics at the time and comparing it, and it was pretty clear and heavy-handed. It is a kids show. Maybe we're putting it up to an impossible standard of other things.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Mandalorian. Tune in next time where we will talk about the next episode. Hopefully, where more awesome things will happen. Preston, thank you for joining me. Guys, we will see you next time. Have a good one.